If you ask anyone, and I mean anyone who truly knows me what my favourite console of all time is, they would 110% tell you it's the SEGA Dreamcast. Literally everything about this little grey box just encapsulates me. I love everything about it. It is hands down my favourite video game system of all time. No other console comes close. I honestly have no idea how this little guy has dug its way so deep into my heart. I am a full-on simp for the Dreamcast. Everything about it is just so perfect. The design, the menu, the startup, the packaging, the controller, the VMU, the VGA output that makes games 20 years old look so crisp, the online capabilities that were miles ahead of its time and far more complex than you would ever think. Trust me, I know, I still play the fucker online through private servers with a Raspberry Pi. And the fucking games. My god, what a truly amazing lineup. Hit after hit after hit after that. I absolutely fucking love the Dreamcast and will big the system up for as long as I breathe. It's just such a product of its time, and that's a good thing. Everything about it screams that late 90s, early 2000s style where everything was extreme and we were on the verge of a new era for games filled with beautiful graphics, immersive worlds, rich stories, and a world of online gaming. The console was truly SEGA at their absolute best. They went full throttle and put absolutely everything they possibly had into the system. Nowadays, Sega plays it very safe. Looking at their lineup of games, while still good, they're all from well-established franchises they know will sell well. But in the Dreamcast era, Sega's creativity pump was on overload, and in my opinion, no game shows that more than Jet Set Radio. I honestly can't think of a better Dreamcast title to start with on this channel. Nope, can't think of anything else at all. Jet Set Radio was released in the year 2000, developed by Smilebit and published by Sega. And I mean, before even starting up the game, let's take a minute to look at the box art. If you compare this to some other Dreamcast games, it stands out instantly. That sketch-like rough angular design of the characters, that logo, the bright and dramatic in-your-face colours that explode all over the game case, it just completely sticks out compared to other stuff you would have seen on the shelves, and screams style. So let's roleplay for a minute. Let's say it's July in the year 2000, and you're looking for new games to play on the Dreamcast. Jet Set Radio has caught your eye, how could it not? And you've shelled out your hard-earned cash and bought the game. You take the game home and open the case. Instantly we can see the creativity and uniqueness of this game bursting out towards you, and we literally haven't even started it up. Look at the disc, designed to look like a vinyl record to instantly set the tone for the game and show how there's a huge emphasis on music. But look closer, look at the designs of the characters here. It's like a fusion of a comic book drawing with eccentric graffiti. Everything is so closely packed together like a jigsaw puzzle, it makes the disc look like it's literally filled to the brim with style and character. If we dig even deeper and look at the manual, we can see in more detail this unique way the characters and world are presented in Jet Set Radio. The reason I've spent an entire section of this video analysing the literal game box is just to really try and get through to you how unique this was for 2000. It's hard to have that perspective nowadays because Jet Set Radio was that good, it essentially ushered in this new art style, and to this day many artists are drawing in the style of the game, and even full games are using the art style like Hover or that new Bomb Rush Cyberpunk game which screams Jet Set Radio. JSR's art style is well established and has been used numerous times in other pieces of media. But again, I take you back to that comparison I did of Jet Set Radio against two other Dreamcast games. In 2000, there was literally nothing like this. It was just an absolute explosion of style, unlike anything anyone had ever seen. But okay, enough talking about the game. Let's actually put the disc into the Dreamcast and get started.
And from Shibuya Joe in the south, the city of daylight, it's those troublemaking punks, the GGs.
Now Jet Set Radio's main emphasis isn't the story, but it's still pretty relevant and doesn't take a complete back seat. Set in a place called Tokyo To, Professor K is a DJ that hosts a pirate radio station listened to by teens in that area, called, as you may have guessed, Jet Set Radio. The teens in Tokyo To graffiti and skate all over the city in different gangs. The main gangs are Poison Jam, a gang of punks fitted in monster costumes that cause havoc, the Love Shockers, who are a group of girls that have had their heart broken and now take it out on the city with their aggressive graffiti, the Noise Tanks, which are the most visually interesting in my opinion, wearing high-tech suits that have an eerie gas mask-like look to them, and lastly the GGs, which is your gang. This is a new gang, like seriously new. The first few things you do in the game is start up the gang and convince people to join you. That's the core premise of the game really. It all boils down to gang territory and trying to target areas of the city to claim them while trying to stop your competitors doing the same thing. All gangs in Tokyo are persistently pursued by the police force led by Captain Onishima, who is one fucking mad bastard. The police force in this game are relentless and are on your ass constantly, but I'll get more into that when talking about the gameplay. As you progress through the game, you defeat all 3 of the gangs in turf wars. After defeating each gang, they drop a strange piece of what appears to be a vinyl record. This for me gave the story some much needed mystery. Yeah, this is nothing groundbreaking, but up until this point you've just been fighting for turf because gang or rebellious teenager. There's no big motive behind it all, you're just having fun spreading your graffiti. This vinyl record that each gang drops a piece of makes you wonder if all the gangs are working together to keep something away from you, or if there's something bigger behind the screens that they're all working towards while your gang is completely out of the know. After defeating the 3rd gang, the Love Shockers, they drop something else suspicious, a badge for an assassin group called the Golden Rhinos. Professor K then explains in a broadcast that this group are known to be incredibly dangerous and are owned by the Rikaku Corporation. The Rikaku Corporation have a huge central building in the heart of Tokyo and have plans to usher in a new age for the city. The Golden Rhinos have been seen covering up a lot of GG graffiti, and with their link to Rikaku who wants to transform Tokyo, the game's narrative suddenly switches from just fighting with rival gangs in a light-hearted rebellious way to fighting against a huge company that is trying to change the whole of Tokyo. This again, while nothing groundbreaking, just adds some flair to the story and makes the stakes a bit higher. This isn't like The Last of Us storytelling or anything, but for a game where the story isn't the main focus, it added in some nice mystery and suspense. Anyway, shortly after this, the GGs are greeted by 2 new characters, Combo and Cube. Now usually the game throws new characters at you every now and again as rivals who challenge you to keep up with them, and if you succeed they will join your gang. But this time things are different. These guys aren't challenging you, they're asking for your help and just asking to be accepted. So instead of playing as a GG member trying to keep up with them, you play as one of them trying to keep up with a GG member, in hopes of being accepted into the gang. Subtle but a nice little change to highlight the vulnerability of these characters and how they're in a much worse situation than the rest of the characters. After eventually proving themselves, they explain to the GGs what's happening. They talk about how they're from a different area and were a group themselves. It was Combo, Cube and someone else called Coin. They talk about how their 3rd member, Coin, has been mysteriously taken and his huge collection of records had been destroyed. The Golden Rhinos are now slowly taking over Tokyo and are becoming a more and more common sight on the streets. Combo and Cube coming to you and telling you what's happened over in their area acts as a warning and makes the stakes a lot more higher than they were before. Well, after fighting with the Golden Rhinos, who are just fucking brutal compared to the Tokyo police force, Poison Jam becomes brainwashed by the mysterious Rikaku Corporation. A fight ensues, and after defeating them, we find out the motive behind the Rikaku group and the Golden Rhinos. Goji, the owner of the Rikaku company, is using the Golden Rhinos to regain one of Coin's records, the Devil's Contract. It's said that if the Devil's Contract record is played, it summons a demon. Goji hopes to use the record to make a pact with the demon and use its power to take over the world. Now yeah, there's no denying that at this point the story does go a bit supernatural and over the top, which can seem just a bit out of place. But the game actually knows this, because after defeating Goji, it's, spoilers, revealed that the record was just an old indie song with a stupid folktale and had no supernatural properties in the first place, which is a funny acknowledgement that the idea of a song having some sort of supernatural power is ridiculous, which is definitely something the internet needs to hear. Overall, I'm not here to pretend this game is genius and gives The Last of Us a run for its money. The gameplay is definitely the main focus for this game, and I think the writers knew that when creating the story, but for what it is, it works very well. The game originally has a light-hearted tone and a very relaxed but energetic vibe. Like what you're doing is fast and exciting, but at the end of the day, it's just kids skating and spraying. Things aren't taken that seriously, unless you're Captain Onishima. Anyway, at first the plot represents that, it's just rebellious kids, and you can see that with mission briefings like, the cops are onto us, don't let them get you, look for red arrows and start spraying. But as we progress and the game gets harder, the plot picks up pace with it, and the stakes become higher and higher, with some minor mystery and suspense added in to keep the player interested. All leading up to the grand fight with Goji, where it's revealed all of the supernatural talk was just a load of hysteria, and Tokyo is back to the GG's playground. So yeah, I think the story is great for this game, not because it's exceptionally written, but because it knows its boundaries. It knows the main reason you're here is for the gameplay and respects that. It finds that balance of keeping things brief but yet simultaneously providing an interesting storyline. The gameplay of Jet Set Radio is so stylistic and it has a unique feel, so when you look at the story you may worry it won't carry that same style over and feel disconnected, but it does perfectly. It keeps that over the top, energetic, fun and funky style throughout. on to gameplay, which is one of the more memorable aspects of Jet Set Radio. So as said before, in the story you play as a member of the GGs skating around Tokyo and spraying your graffiti. I think it's fair to start off with the controls when talking about the gameplay, as this is the aspect of the game that can be quite frustrating and divisive for some. Jet Set Radio definitely takes inspiration from skateboarding games, with the extreme sports theme and the levels designed in a way you can jump and grind all over them getting a high score. However, if I had to draw a direct comparison to a specific skateboard game, it wouldn't be Tony Hawk, which I hear a lot of people say. Tony Hawk's levels, at least in the games being released at the time of JSR, are much more smaller and tightly packed compared to Jet Set Radio. On top of that, the feel of Tony Hawk games are very arcade-like and not very realistic. That's not a bad thing, that's just how the games are made, and for Tony Hawk it works well. The tight small level design mixed with the quick snappy and fast controls make for a very fun game, but it's nothing like Jet Set Radio. Jet Set Radio's controls are much heavier and slower. Now that sounds like a bad thing, but the game places a huge emphasis on momentum. You can get some serious speed in Jet Set Radio if you master the controls and learn the level design. It's just that it's nowhere near as easy to achieve compared to a game like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. If I had to compare Jet Set Radio to a skateboarding game, it would be Thrasher Skate and Destroy on the PS1, which I guarantee none of you have ever played. The game feels much heavier and slower compared to Tony Hawk when starting it up, but just like Jet Set Radio, the game can get fast. You just need to utilise the environment and momentum. Jet Set Radio's controls are probably the aspect of the game that gets the most criticism and is the most divisive, but I really don't think the game controls bad. I just think that people get frustrated because you really need to lean on the environment and momentum to get speed. On your own, you are not particularly fast. Now yes, the control can feel clunky at times, but for the most part I feel it works with the level design. Another thing I've heard people criticize in terms of controls is that when it comes to moving precisely, the characters can feel quite slippy, almost like they're on wheels. Yeah, this complaint I can kinda see, but also in some ways I just can't. One side of me says, well, everyone is on roller skates, so yeah, small precise movement can feel slippery, but I mean, they're on roller skates, so it should be expected that they won't control as well compared to a character just walking. However, the other side of me can agree. There are times in this game, especially when high up and trying to make precise jumps, that the controls really do frustrate me and result in me falling to my death quite a few times. For the most part, I feel that the level design is built around the limitations of the controls, but there are cases where it doesn't, and those sections of the game are frustrating, I won't lie. I think the problem is, like I said before, for the most part the level design is built around the limitations of the controls, so when it stops doing that, it's really apparent. The game should have fully committed, either change the controls to work better with precise platforming, or completely make sure all levels are built around the controls limitations at all times. This is an issue though that for me rarely comes up and is exaggerated by many in my opinion. I think the real reason that the controls get so much scrutiny is because of the sequel Jet Set Radio Future. Instead of doubling down on the heavy yet slippery feel of the characters and emphasis on momentum to gain speed, they instead rework the controls to basically answer all complaints from the first game. Characters are no longer slow and don't take a long time to get going. Instead, they are quick, responsive, and are moving at a fast pace very quickly. A boost has been added that rockets you forward in seconds, and precise platforming works so much better compared to the original. Because Jet Set Radio Future didn't stick with the original's control scheme and changed pretty much everything, I think people just compare the two and shit all over the original's much different control style. Now yeah, I do think that Future's controls are better, but it doesn't make me hate the originals. Instead of comparing the two, I just see them as very different control styles and enjoy them for different reasons. Now Jet Set Radio Future's controls give speed to the player much more easily, and without necessarily doing much, you're going quite fast in the game. As I've said before, the original Jet Set Radio leans on the idea of momentum and building up your speed. However, that's not to say you're completely dependent on the environment for thrilling speeds. Characters do have moves to get things going. So firstly, as simple as it may sound, there is the jump. In Jet Set Radio, characters jump quite high, and when you combine that with a decent pace, you get a particularly long jump. Not only does the jump allow you to get around quickly, as you can get some serious air when going off ramps, but the jump can also help you gain some speed. For example, if you're on a grind rail and losing momentum, jumping forward should give you a bit of a push forward. However, with that said, the jump is also dependent on momentum. The faster you're going, the further your jump is, meaning the jump can only help you in slow situations so much. The jump in Jet Set Radio is truly at its best when it's being used simultaneously with high speeds. However, there is an another move that can get you some speed. By pressing the right trigger down, you can give yourself a quick boost. No, this isn't anything like Jet Set Radio Future where you hit boost and blast off like a fucking rocket, but it can help you get some momentum going. On top of this, it helps when going uphill. The boost is very short, but it can be used infinitely, unlike the boost in Jet Set Radio Future, so it can speed things up a bit. Again though, just like everything else in the game, this is only an aid and won't get you going at blistering speeds on its own. It needs to be used in correlation with the environment and to a lesser extent the jump to really get things speedy. But controls are only one aspect of the game. Let's look at the levels. Now the way the levels work in Jet Set Radio is very interesting and definitely something that hadn't been done before in 2000. While at first the levels may seem quite small, the game eventually blossoms into being almost open world. Kind of. So when you first start the game, you'll probably think that the game features very small levels that can quickly be completed. The first true level of the game, Shibuya GG, tasks you with spraying around a bus terminal. The level is pretty small. There are clear roads going to other areas, but any attempt to go down one results in the game just warning you you're exiting the level, and if you continue, you'll just be thrown back into the menus. So yeah, this first level is pretty small, but still fun. It features a ramp that you can jump off to get to a higher area and grinding rails that feed into stairs with steep inclines and declines. This allows the player to get to grips with the previously mentioned heavy feeling controls and the idea of using your environment and gaining momentum. The stairs are a good place to show the player how you can get some high speed grinding, especially when it's a grind rail going down. The ramp also showcases how you really do need to come into jumps moving with momentum to make them, as if you come into the ramp too slow you won't make the jump. If you fail the jump there's no real consequence, you don't hurt yourself, but it shows the player early on how momentum is needed for platforming without it being excruciatingly frustrating. But anyway, the first level is small and would have you believe that the whole game is built like this, but as soon as the second level we see the game open up more. In the level dealing with the love shockers we get a much bigger level to mess around in. There's a long half pipe stretching right through the level that is essentially a safe area. It's below all the hotspots of the town so you're safe from the police. This long half pipe is a good choice as it gives the player time to try and refine their skills of controlling the characters and performing tricks. Along with that, there are optional locations to tag through graffiti if you want a higher score, meaning you can also practice your timing of hitting the spray button when the prompt comes up while moving. There's two exits from the half pipe leading up to different sections of the level. The first takes you to the highest point where there's two huge graffiti places that need sorting. You can also jump down from this higher section into the middle section of the level. This is the most hectic and dangerous part of the level. There's loads of areas that need spraying, tons of stuff to grind on, moving cars on the roads, and this is where the police force are the most active. I'd say this is a medium sized level overall. I really do love the structure of it though. I think it's an expertly crafted level. The low area with the half pipe is a great place to go for the heat to die down and to practice your skills. The high point of the level is a great blend between a pretty quiet area but still a bit risky as police do sometimes patrol there and will chase you up there. And then the middle area, which is the hectic part of the level with the most risk but also the most potential for a high score, creating a perfect risk versus reward scenario. While I love how all three sections of the level have a different risk associated to them, what really makes the level shine is how they're all linked together so well. You can jump between all three sections of the level very quickly, allowing you to assess the situation and quickly decide if you should move to a different area. But getting back to my point, the levels in Jet Set Radio seem to get larger and larger as you progress through the game, making the game feel even more grand, until at a certain point the levels begin to actually link together. For example, after getting far enough into the game, we see that the half pipe from the Love Shockers level leads into the bus terminal from the first level of the game, and what used to be an exit in Shibuya GG will now take us through to the bottom rows of the Love Shockers level. This is just one example, but all the levels that share themes basically do this. Pretty much all the night levels excluding the city square link together and create one really large night level. The levels with the sunset theme all link together to create a big playground, and it all just makes the game feel like a real world that is connected and makes the city of Tokyo feel so alive. Now this is why I said Jet Set Radio is open world, kind of. The game starts off quite small but quickly grows, and by the end of it, instead of being left with loads of small levels, you have about 3 huge levels that are made up of connected smaller ones. This is still impressive now, but in 2000, this was crazy. The scale of this game was off the charts. Every aspect of these huge levels feels unique and made with speed and fun in mind. No aspect feels bland or boring like a random street would in a real open world game like Watch Dogs or even GTA, because the big maps are made up of smaller levels designed to be played on their own in the first place. The areas are packed to the brim with ramps, grind rails and set pieces. The only games from this time period that I feel even comes close to having this interconnected world feel is Conker's Bad Fur Day and GTA 3. both of which released the following year in 2001. Level design in Jet Set Radio is top notch and can stand up on its own, but the developers gradually having each level interconnect and link is just fucking incredible. It makes the game feel truly alive. Spraying graffiti is another aspect of the gameplay that we haven't talked about yet. This is just something that is fun. The graffiti mechanic in this game works in a unique way. Throughout the level there are these floating spray cans. You need to collect them. How many you can hold varies, as each character can hold a certain amount at once. The locations that require spraying around the levels fall into different categories. Small graffiti that takes 1 can, a large graffiti takes 3, and an extra large graffiti takes 7. The more cans needed, the longer it takes to complete, which means you have to think before starting spraying larger graffiti, as if the police are on your tail, then you may not have enough time to finish and escape. The fact that graffiti spraying is locked behind finding a collectible scattered about the level encourages exploration and to a lesser extent performing tricks, as it's common to see spray cans in areas that require you to use creative methods to get there. The actual process of spraying your graffiti is fun as well. For small graffiti, you simply press down the trigger and you spray, but for the large and extra large graffiti, you need to follow the prompts on screen by moving the analog stick in the desired directions. Now yeah, these are essentially just quick time events, but they're super short and are fun to pull off. In scenarios where you're being chased and can literally see the police running towards you, performing the QTEs is extremely tense as you desperately try to finish so you have time to get away. Oh yeah, before I forget, you can actually edit and make your own graffiti in the menus that can be used in game, which, can I remind you, this is the year 2000. On top of that, you could upload your graffiti to the internet for other players around the world to download. Again, this is fucking the year 2000. The online capabilities of Jet Set Radio are something that needs to be mentioned on their own. Not only could you upload and download other players' graffiti, but you could also read game hints and view online leaderboards, all on a dial-up modem in 2000. The craziest thing is, as mentioned before, I play the Dreamcast Online still through private servers, and the Dreamcast Online community has actually restored Jet Set Radio's online functionality. So if you have your Dreamcast set up online, you can still upload and download graffiti and view the leaderboards. In 2020. Each character in the game can hold a different max amount of cans and also have different attributes. Some are lighter and faster, while some are heavier but have more health. Each character's graffiti QTEs vary slightly as well to keep things fresh. The characters all having different attributes gives the game replayability and a sense of strategy, as you will actually think what character works the best for the level you're about to play. Along with that, you can also replay levels as the different characters to get a different feel and maybe change your score. Oh yeah, the police force. That's yet another aspect of the game that we need to talk about. Captain Onishima is fucking mental and sends in everything he possibly can to get you. It may start off with just dudes running at you with clubs, but it picks up pretty quick. You'll face tanks, helicopters with rockets, and fucking tear gas. The police force are ruthless, and you really need to stay moving if you don't want to get caught. However, once you start messing with the Golden Rhino and Rakaku Corporation, things really start to pick up. You face Arabian ninja people, men with automatic machine guns, men on jetpacks with guns, and suicide bombers. It can seriously get tense, and in some cases it can be a bit too frustrating, like they never let up, but if you learn the levels and master the controls, then you can pretty easily escape their grasp. Now that's the meat of the gameplay in Jet Set Radio, as that's the main stages you play, but there are also other types of missions. Firstly, you have the rival missions, which I briefly spoke about in the story section. You observe a character and then try and copy what they're doing. After doing it a few times, they will join the GGs. These are fun little pace breaker missions that give you some time to purely focus on the roller skate mechanic of the game and help you refine your grinding and skating skills. There is also another type of rival challenge. Sometimes instead of following a rival's moves, you'll have to race through a level against them to be the first to tag a specific place. These are fun, but the only real problem for me is it's not really made very clear where you actually have to race through, so you may lose a couple of times just figuring out where to go. And lastly, there is the battles, where you face against 3 members of a rival gang and spray their backs one by one. These are okay. They can be fun sometimes, but they're just a bit frustrating and can be repetitive when you have to do the same thing 3 times. I also think you can take damage from the rival gangs way too easily. Overall though, the gameplay of Jet Set Radio is such a perfect blend of fleshed out, unique ideas that it creates one of the most interesting game experiences you will ever play.
Hey!
Now I need to take a minute to talk about the graphics for this game. I've already talked about the art style and general aesthetic of the game's world early in this video, but I mean specifically the graphics here. So we need to look at the gaming landscape in 2000. The 5th gen consoles like the original Sony PlayStation and N64 are still very popular, and new games are still being released on them frequently. However, the Sega Saturn is most certainly dead. This is because while Nintendo and Sony are still on their 5th generation consoles, in 1998 Japan and 1999 everywhere else, Sega released the Dreamcast, which was the first 6th generation console to release. In 1999, the Dreamcast was unrivaled. It was by far the most powerful system out. The PlayStation and N64, technically speaking, just could not compete. However, the Dreamcast didn't enjoy that feeling of being the best for very long, as in 2000 the PlayStation 2 was due to release, and in 2001 the Nintendo GameCube was coming out, along with newcomer Microsoft and their Xbox. Now when you compare the Dreamcast to its competitors' 6th generation machines, it's now the weakest of them all. So, in 2000, hype was increasing rapidly for the PlayStation 2, and Sega needed to grab people's attention. It wasn't going to be enough to have a game with high resolution textures, a better frame rate and higher poly models. No, Sega needed something distinctive, something unique, something that had never been done before. And what they came up with was cel-shaded graphics. Now if you want to be really technical, Jet Set Radio wasn't the first game to use cel-shaded graphics. That goes to Fear Effect, which released several months before Jet Set Radio on the PS1, but Jet Set Radio came out a mere 4 months later, so they were incredibly close. Now Fear Effect looks great for a PS1 game, but it's clear it's held back by the console graphically, and when you think of cel-shaded graphics, you don't think of this, you think of this. Jet Set Radio was the game to truly grasp cel-shaded graphics in games perfectly, and many modern games that use the style look very similar to the original Jet Set Radio because it was just done so well originally. Smilebit created an amazing graphic style for the game that made it truly pop. The thick black outlines of the characters truly make the game look like a living comic book and still hold up to this day. Smilebit's cel shading technology for the Dreamcast was actually used again in the game Sonic Shuffle, which, say what you will about the game, the art style is definitely interesting to see Sonic in. It doesn't look as good as Jet Set Radio, but it's a spin-off party game, so that's understandable. I think sometimes people fail to realise how much the cel shaded style saved Jet Set Radio from aging. Relatively early 3D games are notorious for looking but ugly today, and Jet Set Radio does have many graphical similarities to other games of the era, like low resolution textures, blocky environments, and pointy character models, but the cel shading takes those graphical blemishes and spins them into a unique and pleasing aesthetic. The jagged character models and environments now look stylistic with the sharp black outlines, and the textures are implemented in such a way that they still look like they have detail. There's no denying that this game is definitely helped by the Dreamcast support of VGA output. For those of you that don't know what this is, while most consoles of this era use composite AV cables, making a blurry image that looks pretty hideous on modern displays, the Dreamcast also supported VGA. This allowed the Dreamcast to output in 480p progressive scan, making games look super sharp and borderline HD. The VGA support has truly helped the Dreamcast age, as connecting the system up to a modern display looks stunning and very sharp. VGA is being phased out now for purely HDMI, but my TV luckily still supports it, and boy am I glad it does. If you truly want to get VGA out of your Dreamcast but don't have the port on your TV, there are solutions like VGA to HDMI adapters. Anyway, Jet Set Radio. The cel-shaded art style and VGA support made the game age like wine and still be pleasing to look at 20 years later. Even on traditional AV cables, the game still looks good, especially on a CRT. But if you're looking to play Jet Set Radio, there are more accessible options than getting the Dreamcast. While I'm playing the original Dreamcast version with VGA cables, many of you will find it easier to just get the HD re-release from a few years back. This is a solid port of the game. It supports widescreen, cleans up the UI a bit, and as you would expect, supports HD resolutions like 1080p. The only issue for me is 2 tracks from the game have been removed, but for the most part the soundtrack is intact, which is good as it's a huge part of this game's personality. This is probably the best looking version of the game. I'm just a sucker for originality and love the Dreamcast version. The HD re-release is on PS3, Xbox 360, Steam and PS Vita. While it's not on the newest generation of consoles, the 360 port is backwards compatible on Xbox One, which makes things a bit easier. Regardless, the fact that the HD re-release literally just increased the resolution and added widescreen and the game still looks great is a testament to how good it looked in the first place. There are not many other games from 20 years ago that can be put on modern consoles relatively untouched and still look great. The Jet Set Radio soundtrack. This is something special. The JSR soundtrack is widely regarded by many as one of the best video game soundtracks ever, and it has inspired many artists to make and remix songs in the style of the game. SEGA got a variety of artists in for the game, and what's produced is a very unique sound. The sound of this game blends techno, rock, J-pop, hip-hop, funk, and acid jazz. That's a lot of genres blended together, but it works perfectly. Some of the songs in this game are absolute bangers. Do yourself a favour and look up the soundtrack for this game, it is astonishing. While there are a variety of artists used for the music of Jet Set Radio, any fan of the game will tell you that Hideki Naganuma is really who carries the game. He composed a large amount of tracks for the game and also composed a large amount of tracks for the game's sequel, Jet Set Radio Future. Oh, and Sonic Rush as well. His style of music is truly unique, utilising random and different sounds, fast-paced beats, and sampling of pretty much anything he feels like. His music is something else to listen to. While he's no longer with SEGA, he's composed for many other games like Lethal League Blaze, Hover, and he's signed on to do the soundtrack for the upcoming Bomb Rush Cyberpunk game as well. If you want to discover some new music, go check this guy out, his stuff is incredible. If you want some joy in your life as well, follow him on Twitter. He's super deep into the Jet Set Radio Twitter community and constantly talking with fans. On top of that, he's just a funny man to follow. He's constantly tweeting random things, shitposting and making fun of everything. The dude is definitely a laugh and deserves a follow. The music really has had a big impact on people. What proves this is Jet Set Radio Live, hosted by DJ Professor K himself. Yeah, this guy never breaks character. Jet Set Radio Live is basically a website acting as a literal Jet Set Radio, where you can listen to all the Jet Set Radio songs and new remixes. The guy has been running the site for a really long time now and constantly updating and supporting it. It's another thing that definitely needs to be checked out. I'll leave a link to the website in the description. I don't really have anything else to say about music really, just go check out the soundtrack, go check out Hideki on Twitter, and go check out Jet Set Radio Live. Overall, if I haven't made it clear already, I am a big fan of Jet Set Radio. The game is superb, it just oozes that SEGA creativity and charm that was everywhere in the Dreamcast heyday. SEGA is now, in my opinion, one of the companies most known for playing it extremely safe. No risks are ever taken anymore. Games like Shenmue 3 have to be outsourced to crowdfunding for even a chance at release. SEGA only really ports the same like 6 retro games again and again because it's easy and a definite easy sell. They never ever branch away from Sonic, Yakuza, Football Manager, Puyo Puyo or Total War, and even within these franchises they're scared to even try something new there. Sonic Forces was full of gameplay styles thrown together because they had previously had positive reception and SEGA thought it would easily do well. There's no risk, no innovation anymore. Hell, SEGA's shit scared to even give us a PC port of something nowadays. The company is clearly very hesitant on spending money and taking risks, which when you look at the fact that their last huge risk, Sonic Boom, resulted in huge losses and the company downsizing significantly, maybe we can't blame them. But regardless, Jet Set Radio comes from a time of, as bad as it sounds, self-destruct for SEGA. The Dreamcast was their ride or die. They put everything they possibly had into it and went full throttle. The company was only saved from bankruptcy by the god that was Isao Okawa, who in a bid to save the company in 2001 gave back his entire stake in SEGA to the company, which roughly translated to a $695 million donation. He then sadly passed away almost immediately after from heart failure. This man saved SEGA. But my point is, when SEGA were feeling the pressure from Sony, they were down for anything. They wanted Dreamcast to stand out and be a unique platform. That's why titles like Shenmue and Jet Set Radio even exist. The game is just a perfect snapshot of that late 90s SEGA style, and it will forever have a place in my heart. The sequel Jet Set Radio Future is amazing as well. Who knows, if things go well, a video on that game could happen down the line as well. Just before I go, I quickly wanted to say, if you want to hear more from me and some of my friends, I would definitely recommend checking out my podcast, The Spindash Clash. We upload episodes every week and always talk about Sonic, so if you're into that kind of thing, definitely go check it out. Link will be in the description.
Sweet, brother, sweet, sweet, sweet.